They laughed when my wife called me just a facilities manager at her charity gala. I smiled and said nothing. What they didn't know, I owned the building where her wellness center operated. The next morning, she got a letter that made her hands shake. 26 years of marriage ended the day she learned who really paid for her perfect life. My name is Richard Thompson, but everyone calls me Rick. I'm 51 years old, and for the past 2 decades, I've built something I'm proud of. Not that my wife ever bothered to ask about it. To Trish, I was just the guy who paid the bills and showed up when she needed a +1 for her charity events. The Riverside Wellness Foundation Gala was held at the Grandview Hotel, one of those renovated historic buildings downtown with crystal chandeliers and marble floors that echo when you walk. Trish had been planning her outfit for weeks. A navy cocktail dress, pearl earrings, the works. She was on the board, or at least she told people she was. Mostly she organized the silent auction and made sure her name appeared in the program. I wore my gray suit, the one she said made me look presentable enough. I didn't argue. I never did. We arrived at 7. Trish immediately floated toward her circle, the usual crowd. Wealthy women with designer handbags and husbands who talked loudly about golf handicaps and stock portfolios. I grabbed a glass of red wine from a passing server and stood near the auction tables, examining a weekend getaway package to Napa that nobody would bid on. Trish, darling. A woman's voice, bright and performative, cut through the ambient noise. I recognized her. Sandra Kellerman, president of the foundation, a woman who wore her philanthropy like a Miss America sash. Trish kissed both her cheeks, European style, though neither of them had been to Europe in years. "And this must be your husband," Sandra said, turning to me with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is Rick," Trish said, her tone light, almost dismissive. "He manages storage facilities." Sandra's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Oh, how practical." 2 other women joined the circle. Diane, who ran some boutique marketing firm, and Paula, whose husband owned a chain of car dealerships. They both looked at me the way you'd look at a waiter who just spilled your drink. "Storage facilities," Diane repeated, like she was testing the words. "So, like, people rent units to store their junk?" "Something like that," I said evenly. "How quaint," Paula added with a thin smile. "I imagine that keeps you pretty busy." Trish laughed, a sound I used to find charming. Now it just felt sharp. "Oh, Rick's very dependable. Keeps everything running smoothly. Nothing glamorous, but someone has to do it, right?" The women laughed. Not loud, not cruel, just enough to let me know I was the punchline. I stood there, glass in hand, and said nothing. My face stayed neutral. I learned a long time ago that reacting only made it worse. Trish wanted me to be the boring husband, the safe background character in her curated life. So I played the part. "Well," Sandra said, recovering with practiced grace, "we need all kinds of contributions to make the world go round." "Exactly," Trish said, touching Sandra's arm. "Now, tell me about the keynote speaker. I heard he's absolutely inspiring." They turned away from me, a seamless pivot, and continued their conversation as if I'd never been standing there. I took a slow sip of wine and walked toward the bar. Behind me, I heard Diane's voice drop to a stage whisper. "Storage facilities, really?" More laughter. I ordered a bourbon neat. The bartender, a young guy with slick back hair, poured it without judgment. I thanked him, left a generous tip, and walked out onto the balcony. The city stretched out below me, lights flickering in office windows. Somewhere down, there was one of my properties. Trish didn't know I owned 14 storage facilities across 3 states. She didn't know about the LLC, the revenue reports, or the quarterly dividends that funded her wellness center, her shopping trips, and her charity galas. She thought I was a manager, a glorified custodian. I finished the bourbon and set the glass down on the stone railing. The cool October air bit at my face, but I didn't go back inside. Not yet. I had planning to do. I didn't sleep that night. Trish came home around 11, humming some tune from the gala, kicked off her heels in the hallway, and went straight to bed without saying a word to me. I heard the bedroom door close, then silence. I stayed in my office, the small room at the back of the house that Trish called Rick's Cave. She never came in here. "Too boring," she'd said once. "Just boxes and files and that depressing desk." I liked it that way. I pulled open the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet and removed a folder I hadn't touched in months. Inside were the documents I kept separate from everything else. The ones that told the real story. Thompson Storage Solutions, LLC. Established in 1998. 14 facilities across Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. Annual revenue hovering around $4.2 million. Give or take, depending on occupancy rates. I'd started with one building, a rundown property in Columbus that nobody wanted. Bought it cheap, renovated it myself, rented the units, and reinvested every dollar. Trish thought I was managing someone else's property. She'd never asked to see a pay stub. Never wondered why we could afford the house, the cars, her endless renovations, and boutique shopping trips. I flipped to the next section. Her wellness center. Serenity Space, she called it. Yoga classes, meditation workshops, overpriced smoothies. It occupied a 1,200 square foot unit in one of my facilities on the east side. She paid rent every month, or at least she thought she did. The payments came out of her joint account, which I funded. Essentially, she was paying herself with my money. The lease was in her business name, but I was listed as the guarantor. She needed that to get approved. My signature made it possible. I found the clause I was looking for. Section 8. Termination rights. The landlord reserves the right to terminate this lease with 30 days' notice in the event of conduct detrimental to the property's reputation or violation of community standards. I read it twice, then pulled out my phone and opened the video Diane had posted on social media from the gala. She tagged Trish. The clip was only 15 seconds, but it was enough. Trish, laughing with her wine glass tilted, saying, "Rick's very dependable. Keeps everything running smoothly. Nothing glamorous, but someone has to do it, right?" The comments below were predictable. "Glad you've got a steady guy. At least he shows up." Laughing emojis. Trish had liked 2 of them. I set the phone down and stared at the lease. 30 days notice. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my property manager, Alan. Subject line: lease review required. I didn't send it yet. Just saved it in drafts. Then I opened a second folder. This one contained financial statements, tax returns, and a list of shared assets. The house was in both our names, but I'd paid the down payment and every mortgage check since. The cars, same story. Her credit card were linked to accounts I controlled. Brandon, our son, was finishing his senior year at Ohio State, studying pre-law. Emily, our daughter, was a sophomore at Miami University, undecided on her major, but leaning toward communications. I'd set up education trusts for both of them years ago. Trish didn't know about those either. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and started making a list. 1. Separate finances. 2. Review all jointly held assets. 3. Consult with Alan about lease termination process. 4. Contact attorney. I paused on number 4. I knew a guy, Frank Bowen, 68, retired but still sharp. He'd handled my uncle's estate years back. Tough, no nonsense, the kind of lawyer who didn't waste time on feelings. I added his name to the list. Outside, a car door slammed. A neighbor coming home late. The sound echoed in the quiet. I closed the folders, stacked them neatly, and locked the cabinet. Trish was still asleep when I finally went to bed. She didn't stir when I slipped under the covers. I lay there in the dark, eyes open, mind running. 26 years. It was a long time to be invisible. Frank Bowen lived in a modest ranch house on the north side of town, the kind of place that hadn't changed since 1985. Beige siding, small front yard, American flag hanging by the door. I pulled into his driveway at 9 in the morning, 2 days after the gala. He met me at the door with a firm handshake and a pot of coffee already brewing. "Rick," he said, his voice gravelly from years of courtroom arguments and unfiltered cigarettes. "Been a while." "Too long," I replied. We sat in his den, a wood-paneled room filled with law books and framed photos of his late wife. Frank had lost her to cancer 6 years ago. Never remarried. Said he'd already had the best. I told him everything. The gala, Trish's comments, the lease, the finances. I kept my tone even factual. Frank listened without interrupting, occasionally sipping his coffee. When I finished, he set his mug down and leaned back in his chair. 26 years, he said. That's a long time to play the fool. I nodded. I wasn't playing. No, he agreed. You were surviving. There's a difference. He stood, walked to his bookshelf, and pulled down a thick binder. Here's what you need to understand, Rick. Ohio's a marital property state. Everything you earned during the marriage is technically half hers. But, he held up a finger, if you can prove she didn't contribute, and if you kept your business assets properly separated, you've got leverage. They're separated, I said. The LLC predates the marriage. Frank smiled, the kind of smile a wolf gives before it strikes. Even better. Now, the wellness center lease. You're the landlord. Through the LLC, yes. And she signed the lease knowing the terms. She did. Frank flipped through the binder, found a page, tapped it. Then you've got cause. Public humiliation, damage to your reputation as the property owner. It's thin, but it'll hold if you document it properly. You'll need that video, any witnesses, anything she posted online. I have it, I said. Good. Now, here's the hard part. He sat back down, looked me straight in the eye. When you do this, Rick, there's no going back. She'll fight. She'll cry. She'll tell everyone you're a monster. The kids will hear things. Are you ready for that? I thought about Brandon and Emily. Both good kids, smart, independent. They'd always been closer to me than a Trish, but family loyalty ran deep. I'll talk to them first, I said. Frank nodded. Do it soon. And Rick, don't leave her anything she doesn't deserve. She wouldn't do the same for you. I left his house an hour later with a clear plan and a recommendation for a forensic accountant. The weight in my chest felt lighter. I drove to Columbus the next morning to see Brandon. He shared an apartment near campus with 2 roommates, both law students like him. I texted ahead. He met me at a coffee shop on High Street, casual place with mismatched chairs and indie music playing too loud. Brandon looked like me at his age. Tall, lean, sandy hair that never stayed combed. He had Trish's blue eyes, but his steady gaze was all mine. Hey, Dad, he said, standing to shake my hand. We'd always done that. Never been much for hugging. Brandon, I said, sitting down across from him. Thanks for meeting me. He ordered an espresso. I got black coffee. We made small talk for a few minutes, classes, internships, his girlfriend Sarah. Then he set his cup down and looked at me. Something's wrong, he said. It wasn't a question. I told him. Not everything, but enough. The gala, what Trish said, how she'd been treating me for years. I didn't mention the lease termination yet. Just laid out the facts. Brandon's jaw tightened. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he sat back and exhaled slowly. Mom said that, he asked quietly. She did. In front of a room full of people. He shook his head. I'm not surprised. That caught me off guard. You're not. Dad, I've seen how she talks to you. How she acts like you're just there. I never said anything because I figured it wasn't my place. He paused. But yeah, I've noticed. Something in my chest loosened. Emily, I asked. Brandon hesitated. Emily's different. She and Mom are close. She's not going to take this well. I know. What are you going to do? I looked at my son, this young man who was already thinking like a lawyer, already weighing consequences. I'm going to stop being invisible, I said. Brandon nodded slowly. Then he reached across the table and gripped my shoulder. Good, he said. It's about time. Emily agreed to meet me for lunch the following Saturday. She picked the place, a trendy salad spot near her campus in Oxford. She was waiting at a corner table when I arrived, scrolling through her phone, long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked up and smiled. Hey, Dad, she said, standing to hug me. She'd always been affectionate, unlike Brandon. Hey, sweetheart, I said, hugging her back. We ordered, made small talk about her classes, her sorority, an upcoming formal she was planning. She was animated, happy. I hated what I was about to do. When the food arrived, I set my fork down and looked at her. Emily, I need to talk to you about something serious. Her smile faded. Is someone sick? No, nothing like that. I paused. It's about your mother and me. Her eyes widened slightly. Are you guys getting divorced? We will be. Soon. Emily set down her fork. Dad, what happened? I told her. Not the business details, not the lease. Just the basics. How Trish had treated me. The things she'd said publicly. The way she dismissed me for years. I kept my voice calm, factual. Emily listened, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. Dad, Mom jokes around sometimes, but she doesn't mean anything by it, Emily said, her voice defensive. That's just how she is. It's more than jokes, Emily. But you guys have been together forever. You can't just throw that away because she made a few comments at a party. It's not one party. It's 26 years of being treated like I don't matter. Emily shook her head. I don't believe that. Mom loves you. Does she? I asked quietly. Emily's face flushed. Dad, this is crazy. You're overreacting. Brandon doesn't think so. Her head snapped up. You talked to Brandon? I did. He understands. Of course he does, Emily said, her voice rising slightly. Brandon always takes your side. He's just like you, cold and logical about everything. That stung, but I kept my composure. Emily, I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm telling you what's happening, so you hear from me first. What about Mom? Does she know? Not yet. Emily stood abruptly, grabbing her purse. I can't do this right now. Emily, please sit down. No, Dad. I need to think. Her eyes were shiny with tears. I thought you were different. I thought you were the stable one. She walked out before I could respond. I sat there for a long moment, staring at her half-eaten salad. Then I paid the bill and left. Outside, I called Brandon. He answered on the second ring. She didn't take it well, I said. I know, Brandon replied. She just called me crying. I'm handling it. Thanks, son. Dad, don't back down because Emily's upset. She'll come around. She just needs time. I hope he was right. The forensic accountant Frank recommended was a woman named Helen Zhang. Mid-40s, efficient, no nonsense. She met me at my storage facility office on Monday morning with a laptop and a briefcase full of documents. Mr. Thompson, she said, shaking my hand firmly. Frank speaks highly of you. Call me Rick. We sat down at the conference table in my office. She opened her laptop and pulled out a legal pad. I've reviewed the preliminary financial documents you sent, Helen said. Your LLC structure is solid. The storage facilities are clearly premarital assets or acquired with premarital funds. Your wife has no legal claim to them. What about the house? Jointly owned, purchased during the marriage. She's entitled to half the equity unless you can demonstrate sole contribution, which your mortgage records suggest you can. I paid every mortgage payment, I said. Helen made note. We'll need bank statements proving that. What about retirement accounts? I have a 401k and an IRA, both in my name. Any joint accounts? One checking account. She uses it for household expenses. I've been funding it for years. Helen nodded. We'll freeze that before filing. I'll also recommend you open a separate account immediately and reroute your income. Already done, I said. She looked up impressed. Good. What about her wellness center? I handed her the lease agreement. Helen scanned it, her expression shifting. You're her landlord, she said. Through the LLC, yes. Does she know? No. Helen allowed herself a small smile. Rick, this is leverage. If you terminate her lease, she loses her business location. That's significant. I plan to terminate it this week. Do it carefully, Helen said. Document everything. Make sure the termination notice cites specific lease violations. Frank mentioned a video. I showed her the clip from the gala. She watched it twice. Public defamation of the property owner, Helen said. That'll work. I'll draft a memo supporting the termination. We spent the next hour going through every asset. The cars, both titled in my name. The vacation property in Tennessee, inherited from my uncle. Trish's credit cards, all linked to accounts I controlled. By the time Helen left, I had a clear picture. Trish had nothing that was truly hers. Everything she thought she owned, everything she'd built her identity around, was funded by me. It was time she learned that. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray. I'd barely slept, but my mind was clear. I drove to my main storage facility on the east side at 7:30, an hour before Trish usually opens Serenity Space. My property manager, Alan, was already there, waiting in the lobby with the envelope. You sure about this, Rick? Alan asked. He was a good guy, mid-30s, worked for me for 8 years. He knew Trish, had processed her rent checks every month. I'm sure, I said. He handed me the envelope. Inside was the lease termination notice, printed on official Thompson Storage Solutions letterhead, notarized and dated. 60 days notice, citing Section 8, conduct detrimental to property reputation. Attached was a printed screenshot of the gala video and a formal statement from Helen Zhang outlining breach of trust. She's going to lose it, Alan said. I know. At 9:15, Trish's silver Lexus pulled into the parking lot. I watched from Alan's office window as she got out, carrying her yoga mat bag and a smoothie. She looked relaxed, unhurried. She had a class starting at 10. She walked into the building, heels clicking on the tile floor. I heard her greet someone in the hallway, laugh at something. Then she approached the front desk where our receptionist, Carla, was waiting. I'd briefed Carla the night before, told her what to do, what to say. She was nervous, but professional. From the window, I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the exchange. Trish smiled at Carla, said something cheerful. Carla smiled back politely, then reached under the desk and pulled out the envelope. Trish's smile faltered. She looked at the envelope, confused. Her name was printed across the front in bold letters. She took it, turned it over in her hands, said something to Carla. Carla responded with a small shake of her head, gesturing toward the envelope. Trish opened it. I watched her face change. Confusion, then comprehension, then disbelief. She pulled out the termination notice, scanned the first page. Her hand started to shake. The smoothie slipped from her other hand and hit the floor, the lid popping off, green liquid spreading across the tile. She didn't notice. Her eyes moved down the page, reading faster now. Then she looked up at Carla, said something sharp. Carla kept her expression neutral, pointed to a paragraph in the letter. Trish read it again. Her face went pale. Then she looked around the lobby, frantic, like she was trying to find someone. Her gaze landed on the directory board near the elevator. Thompson Storage Solutions, LLC. 5th floor. She started toward the elevator. Alan looked at me. Should I stop her? No, I said. Let her come. Trish jabbed the elevator button repeatedly. When the doors opened, she stepped inside. I watched the floor indicator climb. 3, 4, 5. The elevator doors opened on my floor. I was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, waiting. Trish stepped out, the letter clutched in her hand. Her eyes were wide, mascara already smudging at the corners. Rick, she said, her voice trembling. What is this? Exactly what it says, I replied calmly. You're my landlord? I am. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You've been my landlord this whole time. Yes. And you're evicting me? Terminating your lease. There's a difference. Her face twisted. Rick, this is insane. You can't do this. I can. And I am. She stepped closer, desperation creeping into her voice. Why? Because of what I said at the gala. Rick, I was joking. You know I didn't mean it. You meant every word, I said quietly. And you've meant it for years. Trish's hands started shaking harder. Rick, please. The wellness center is everything to me. You can't just take it away. You took my dignity away, I said. For 26 years. Consider us even. Her face flushed red. You're doing this to hurt me. No, I said. I'm doing this because you never respected me enough to ask who I really was. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. I turned and walked back into my office, closing the door behind me. Through the frosted glass, I saw her standing there, motionless, the letter dangling from her hand. Then she turned and walked back to the elevator. I sat down at my desk and exhaled slowly. It was done. That evening, Brandon called me. He'd heard from Emily, who'd heard from Trish. The story was already spiraling. Dad, Mom's telling everyone you blindsided her, Brandon said. She's saying you're being cruel, that you're trying to destroy her business out of spite. What do you think? I asked. Brandon paused. I think she had it coming. But Emily's a mess. She's taking Mom's side hard. I expected that. Dad, there's something else. Brandon's tone shifted, more serious. I found some things. About Mom. What kind of things? Financial stuff. I was helping Emily sort through some old family documents for a school project last year. I saw credit card statements, receipts. Mom spent over $15,000 at some resort in Arizona 2 years ago. Said it was a wellness retreat for the business. I leaned forward, and I looked it up. The resort doesn't do wellness retreats. It's a luxury couple spa, and I found a receipt for 2 people. My chest tightened. Did you tell Emily? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. Send me everything you found. Already did. Check your email. I opened my laptop. Brandon's email was there, with attachments. Receipts, credit card statements, booking confirmations. All in Trish's name. All for 2 guests. One receipt showed a couple's massage package. Another showed a private dinner for 2 at the resort restaurant. The dates matched a weekend Trish told me she was attending a yoga instructor certification course. Brandon, I said slowly. Thank you. Dad, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. You were protecting your mother. I understand. I'm not protecting her anymore, Brandon said firmly. She lied to all of us. And she's still lying. That night, I forwarded everything to Helen Zhang and Frank Bowen. Helen responded within an hour. This is significant. Possible misuse of joint funds. We can use this to argue for unequal asset division. Frank's response was shorter. She's been playing you for years, Rick. Time to finish this. I sat back in my chair and stared at the documents on my screen. Trish hadn't just disrespected me. She betrayed me. Probably more than once. And now I had proof. The fallout came fast. Trish hired a lawyer, some aggressive woman named Monica Barrett, who specialized in protecting women's rights in divorce cases. She sent me a letter demanding spousal support, half the house, and compensation for emotional distress and business disruption. Frank Bowen read it and laughed. She's swinging wild. Let her. But the real damage was happening with Emily. She'd stopped answering my calls. Brandon told me she'd moved back home temporarily to be with Trish, who is now living in a small rental apartment near her closed wellness center. She thinks you're destroying Mom's life, Brandon said over the phone. I try to show her the Arizona receipts, but she won't look at them. She says you probably faked them. Did you tell her about Derek Ashford? I asked. I tried. She doesn't believe Mom would do that. 2 weeks after serving the papers, I got a call from my younger brother, Tommy. He'd heard about the divorce through family channels and wanted to meet. We met at a bar downtown, the kind of place with dim lighting and sports on every screen. Tommy was 2 years younger than me, built like he still lifted weights every day, which he did. Former Marine, now ran a construction company. He ordered us both beers and got straight to it. I heard what Trish did, Tommy said. The gala, the humiliation, all of it. Word travels fast. I also heard about the other guy. Brandon told me. I nodded. Tommy leaned forward, his voice low and hard. Rick, I know you're handling this legally, but say the word and I'll have a conversation with this guy. The kind that leaves an impression. No, I said firmly. That's not how we're doing this. Tommy sat back, disappointed but respectful. You're a better man than me. If someone disrespected my wife like that, there'd be consequences. There are consequences, I said. Just not the kind you're thinking. What do you mean? I told him about the lease termination, the asset separation, the evidence Helen Zhang was compiling. Tommy listened, his expression shifting from anger to something like admiration. You're dismantling her entire life, Tommy said quietly, without throwing a single punch. That's the point, I said. Violence is easy. This is permanent. Tommy raised his beer. To being civilized, then. We clinked glasses. Later that night, Emily finally called. Her voice was cold, formal. Dad, I need you to stop this. Mom's falling apart. She can't eat, can't sleep. She's talking about selling everything just to pay her lawyer. Emily, your mother made choices. She's dealing with the consequences. You're being cruel. I'm being fair. No, Emily said, her voice breaking. You're being vindictive. This isn't the dad I know. Maybe you didn't know me as well as you thought, I said gently. She hung up. Brandon called 5 minutes later. I heard. She's really struggling with this, Dad. I know. Do you want me to try again? No. She needs to see the truth herself. It can't come from us. And then, 3 days later, Emily found it. Brandon told me she'd gone to Trish's apartment to help pack some things from the old wellness center. In a box of old papers, Emily found a receipt from the Arizona resort. 2 guests. Couple's package. She confronted Trish. Trish tried to explain it away, said it was a business contact, a potential investor. Emily called Brandon, sobbing, demanding to know if there was more. Brandon showed her everything. The credit card statements, the receipts from Arizona, the timeline that didn't add up. Emily didn't call me. But 3 days later, she sent a text. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have listened. Can we talk? I called her immediately. We talked for an hour. She cried. I didn't say I told you so. I just listened. I feel so stupid, Emily said. I defended her. I called you cruel. You were defending your mother. There's no shame in that. But she lied to all of us. For years. Yes, I said quietly. She did. What happens now? Now you focus on school. Let me handle the rest. Okay, Dad. Emily. Yeah. I love you. That never changes. She was quiet for a moment. I love you too. The divorce finalized 4 months later. Trish got the car she was driving, a small settlement for transitional expenses, and nothing else. The house stayed mine. The storage facilities stayed mine. She had no claim to any of it. Her lawyer tried to argue for spousal support based on the length of the marriage, but Helen Zhang presented the evidence of Trisha's extramarital spending, the misuse of joint funds, and her public defamation. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Trish moved to Florida 2 months after the divorce. Emily told me she was living with an aunt, trying to start fresh. I didn't ask for details. I didn't care. Brandon graduated from law school that spring. I was there in the front row with Emily beside me. He gave a speech at the reception, thanked his family, looked straight at me, and said, "Especially my dad, who taught me that integrity isn't about never falling. It's about standing back up when someone tries to knock you down." The room applauded. I felt something break loose in my chest. Emily transferred to Ohio State to be closer to home. She changed her major to business administration. Said she wanted to understand what I did, how I built things. We had lunch every other week. Slowly, we rebuilt what Trisha tried to destroy. One Saturday, 6 months after the divorce, I took Brandon and Emily to the main storage facility. I showed them the operation, the books, the expansion plans. They asked questions. Good ones. "Dad," Brandon said as we stood in my office, looking out over the facility floor, "why didn't you ever tell us about this? I wanted you to see me for who I was, not what I owned." "And did we?" Emily asked quietly. "You do now," I said. Brandon put a hand on my shoulder. Emily hugged me. We stood there, the three of us, in the office Trish never bothered to visit. I'd lost a wife who never respected me, but I'd gained something more valuable. My children's respect, my own self-worth, and the knowledge that I'd faced the worst kind of betrayal and come out stronger. A year later, I was having coffee with Frank Bowen at his house when he asked me if I had any regrets. "No," I said. "I should have done it sooner." Frank smiled. "Most men wait too long. You waited just long enough. What's the difference? Timing. You struck when you had leverage, when you had proof, when you could do it clean. That takes patience. And anger," I said. "Controlled anger," Frank corrected. "The best kind." I expanded the business after that. Opened 3 new facilities. Hired Brandon part-time to help with contracts. Emily did social media marketing for the company during her summer breaks. We became a team. Trish sent one email, 8 months after the divorce. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I deleted it without reading. Some apologies come too late. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. I'm Rick Thompson. I'm 52 years old. I own 14 storage facilities and have 2 incredible kids who know exactly who their father is. And I sleep soundly every night. That's enough.